Welcome to our deep dive into dark money in American politics.
Oh, yeah.
You sent us a ton of articles and excerpts,
Uh-huh.
and it looks like you're really digging into Jane Mayer's book, Dark Money.
Great book.
It's a fantastic pick.
It is.
And it's definitely become the go-to source for understanding the hidden forces shaping the political landscape.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a deep dive that could change how you view politics entirely. Ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly is dark money?
Right.
We hear the term thrown around a lot,
We do.
but I think it's worth defining it clearly before we go any further.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to get lost in the jargon.
For sure.
In the simplest terms, dark money is political spending, where the source of the money is hidden.
Okay.
Instead of donations coming directly from individuals or corporations,
Right.
they're funneled through a maze of shell organizations,
Oh, wow.
making it nearly impossible to trace where the money originated.
So basically, it's a way for wealthy individuals and corporations to exert influence on politics without anyone knowing who's pulling the string.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And Mayer's book really dives into how billionaires, particularly the Koch brothers, have used this tactic to push their agenda.
I'm already feeling a bit unnerved, and we're just getting started.
I know, right?
Mayer argues that this isn't just about winning elections, right?
Yeah.
She's saying it's about something much bigger and more insidious.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Wow.
Mayer's central argument is that the goal goes beyond just influencing elections.
Right.
It's about fundamentally reshaping American thought itself.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about changing the very fabric of public discourse and policy.
Okay, this is where things get really complex and potentially unsettling.
Yeah.
You ready to go deeper?
Let's do it.
Okay.
The Kochs have poured billions of dollars into this effort.
Wow.
We're talking about funding think tanks,
Yeah.
media outlets,
Uh-huh.
advocacy groups,
Okay.
even universities, all with the aim of promoting their libertarian ideology.
That's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this could have a ripple effect across so many areas of society.
Yeah, right.
Before we get into the specifics of how this web of influence works,
Okay.
I think it's worth taking a closer look at the Kochs themselves.
Sure.
It's easy to just dismiss them as those billionaire brothers.
Right.
But their story is much more complex than that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's crucial to understand their motivations.
Okay.
Their fascination with libertarianism goes all the way back to their childhood.
Interesting.
Heavily influenced by a free market economist.
Uh-huh.
Combine that with inheriting a massive oil fortune,
Yeah.
and you have the perfect storm for enacting their ideology.
So it's not just about money.
No.
It's about deeply held beliefs combined with the resources to actually make them a reality.
Exactly.
And they were incredibly strategic about it.
Oh, yeah.
Their approach wasn't just about throwing money at political campaigns randomly.
Right.
They were laser focused on shaping the ideas behind the campaigns themselves.
Yes.
So influencing the conversation itself
Exactly.
rather than just backing specific candidates. That's pretty clever.
It's incredibly effective.
Yeah?
And to do this, they've funded a vast network of institutions,
Yeah.
like the Cato Institute,
Okay.
which is a libertarian think tank that generates research and policy papers.
Ah, so that's how they get their ideas into the mainstream.
Exactly.
And you also mentioned advocacy groups like Americans for Prosperity.
Right.
How do those fit into the picture?
Think of them as the bridge between ideas and action.
Great.
Americans for Prosperity focuses on grassroots organizing and lobbying.
Uh-huh.
They take the ideas generated by the think tanks
Right.
and translate them into actual political pressure.
This is starting to feel like a well-oiled machine.
It is.
We've got the think tanks generating the ideas.
Yeah.
And then the advocacy groups pushing those ideas into the political sphere.
And don't forget the media element.
Oh, right.
They've invested heavily in media outlets
Okay.
to control the narrative surrounding their agenda,
Got it.
ensuring their message is amplified.
It's starting to feel less like a machine and more like an entire ecosystem.
It is.
We're seeing a top-down and bottom-up approach happening simultaneously.
Uh-huh.
And it's all connected by this flow of dark money.
Yeah.
I have to ask, where exactly is this money flowing? How does it actually work?
This is where we get into the mechanics of how dark money operates.
Oh, okay.
It's a complex system that relies on shell corporations and something called 501c4 nonprofits.
I think a lot of people hearing that term 501c4 might be scratching their heads right now.
Probably.
Can you break that down for us?
Of course.
Okay.
These are groups that are classified as social welfare organizations.
Okay.
And crucially, they're not required to disclose their donors.
Mm.
This lack of transparency is what makes them the perfect vehicle for dark money.
So we're talking about a complete lack of accountability.
Right.
Someone could donate millions of dollars to one of these groups,
Right.
and the public would have absolutely no idea where the money came from.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
And to make matters worse,
Oh.
this whole system was supercharged by the Citizens United Supreme Court ruling in 2010.
Right.
It basically loosened the restrictions on political spending by corporations and unions.
Yeah.
Arguing that these donations are a form of free speech,
Mm.
protected by the First Amendment.
That's a case we hear about all the time, but it's worth reminding ourselves how it directly connects to this issue.
Definitely.
Citizens United basically opened the floodgates for dark money to flow even more freely.
You got it.
And Mayer goes on to give specific examples of this,
He does.
like the story of a Wisconsin Club for Growth,
Right.
funded almost entirely by a single anonymous donor.
Yeah.
This group played a significant role in supporting Governor Scott Walker's controversial anti-union legislation in 2011.
Huge impact.
So we're not just talking about abstract concepts here.
No.
This is having a real impact on people's lives.
It is.
But I have to ask the million-dollar question,
Okay.
or should I say the billion-dollar question.
Go for it.
How does this impact you, the voter?
That's the crux of the issue, isn't it?
It seems like it.
And Mayer's argument is that dark money erodes public trust in our democracy.
Oh, really?
If you don't know who's funding the campaigns,
Right.
how can you truly evaluate the messages being put out there?
It makes you wonder, who's really behind the curtain shaping the narratives we're consuming?
Exactly.
It's hard to feel confident in the system when you don't know who's pulling the strings.
Exactly.
And it gives these wealthy donors an outsized influence,
It does.
as essentially allowing them to drown out the voices of ordinary citizens.
You got it.
I'm starting to see why this is such a big deal.
Yeah.
But haven't there been counter-arguments to Mayer's thesis?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
People who say she's overblowing the issue?
You're right. There are always alternative perspectives.
Like what?
Some argue that all political spending, regardless of the source, is protected under the First Amendment as a form of free speech.
Okay.
They claim that any attempt to restrict those donations is an infringement on people's rights.
I can see how that argument might appeal to people,
Yeah.
but honestly, it's a bit of a head-scratcher for me.
It is a tough one.
Doesn't unlimited spending by the wealthy essentially give them a megaphone that drowns everyone else out? How is that a level playing field?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
It gets to the heart of the debate.
Okay.
Is it truly free speech when some voices are amplified to a degree that others can't even be heard?
This is giving me a lot to think about.
It's a question a lot of people are grappling with.
Yeah.
And it's not just about elections.
Right.
The influence of dark money reaches far beyond that.
Oh.
It seeps into policymaking, often shaping the very agenda that gets discussed and debated in the halls of power.
You've piqued my curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
How does this hidden influence actually translate into specific policies? Can you give us a concrete example?
Think about industries like pharmaceuticals or fossil fuels.
Okay.
They have a vested interest in minimizing regulations and maximizing profits.
Of course.
By funneling dark money into lobbying efforts, they can exert pressure on lawmakers to pass legislation that benefits their bottom line, sometimes at the expense of the public good.
So it's not just about getting a certain candidate elected.
Right.
It's about creating a legislative environment that's favorable to these donors.
Exactly.
That's pretty insidious.
It is.
And this can have a profound impact on issues that affect all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Take climate change, for instance.
Huge one.
The fossil fuel industry has poured millions into think tanks and advocacy groups that downplay the science and actively work to block efforts to address this global crisis.
It's a problem.
Wow. That's a chilling thought. That these powerful interests can manipulate the political system to stall progress on such critical issues.
It really is.
It makes you wonder what other agendas are being pushed behind the scenes.
You and me both.
I'm starting to feel a bit overwhelmed by all of this.
I hear you.
Feels like we're uncovering a hidden network of power
Yeah.
that's almost impossible to fight against.
It can feel that way.
But it's important to remember that Mayer's book isn't just a depressing expose.
It's not.
There are also stories of resistance
There are.
and attempts to fight back against this tide of dark money.
Absolutely.
That's a relief to hear. Tell me more about these efforts.
Okay.
Who are the people pushing back, and what tactics are they using?
There's a vibrant movement of grassroots organizations and activists who are working tirelessly to expose these hidden networks and advocate for reform.
Wow.
They're using a variety of strategies like investigative journalism to trace the flow of dark money, filing lawsuits to challenge the legality of these practices, and launching public awareness campaigns to educate voters about the problem.
So shining a light on these shadowy dealings is a key part of the strategy.
Absolutely.
What about legislative efforts? Are there any promising bills or initiatives on the horizon that could help curb the influence of dark money?
There are definitely efforts underway.
Okay.
Some states have taken the initiative to implement their own campaign finance reform.
Okay, like what?
For example, some states require greater disclosure of donors, making it harder for dark money to stay hidden.
Makes sense.
Others have established public financing systems for elections, which can level the playing field and reduce the influence of big money.
Those sound like positive steps.
They are.
But what about at the federal level? I know we touched on the Disclose Act earlier.
Yes.
Which aimed to force these secretive groups to reveal their donors.
Right.
What's the latest on that?
The Disclose Act has been introduced in Congress multiple times, but unfortunately, it's faced significant opposition.
Oh, really? From who?
Primarily from those who benefit from the current system.
I can't say I'm surprised.
Right.
It seems like those in power rarely want to give up their advantages.
It's true.
Even if it's for the greater good.
Unfortunately.
But I'm curious, what are some of the main obstacles to enacting meaningful reform at the federal level?
One of the biggest challenges is the sheer power of the interests that benefit from the current system.
Okay.
We're talking about industries with vast resources at their disposal.
Right.
And they're very adept at using those resources to influence politicians and stall progress.
It's a classic case of those in power protecting their own interest.
It is.
Even if it comes at the expense of everyone else.
It's frustrating.
It feels like a David and Goliath situation.
It does.
But instead of a slingshot, David has to fight back with transparency and public awareness.
That's a great analogy.
And it highlights another obstacle.
That's that.
Which is partisan gridlock. Campaign finance reform is often a highly politicized issue.
It is.
With each side accusing the other of hypocrisy and bad faith. It's frustrating.
It is.
Because even though both sides acknowledge the problem of dark money, they can't seem to agree on a solution.
It's true.
It seems like we're stuck in this cycle where we're aware of the problem, we have potential solutions, but the political will to implement them is lacking.
It's discouraging.
It's easy to feel discouraged.
I know it can feel that way.
Yeah.
But despite the challenges, it's crucial to remember that the fight for reform is ongoing.
Okay.
There are dedicated individuals and organizations out there who refuse to let dark money undermine our democracy.
That's good.
And they're making progress.
Okay, what kind of progress?
Public awareness is growing.
Good.
And the demand for transparency and accountability is getting louder.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to acknowledge those efforts and celebrate the small victories along the way.
We do.
But before we get too carried away, I want to bring us back to the criticism of Mayer's book.
Right?
You mentioned earlier that some people accuse her of being biased against the Kochs.
I did.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Some critics argue that while Mayer's research is impressive, she tends to paint the Kochs as villains.
Right.
Oversimplifying their motivations. And ignoring the nuances of their beliefs.
So they're saying she's taking it too far.
In a way.
They argue that she focuses too narrowly on the Kochs.
Yeah.
Downplaying the role of other wealthy donors and corporate interests in the dark money system.
That's their perspective.
That's a fair point. It's important to consider those critiques and avoid falling into the trap of oversimplifying complex issues.
It's important.
But even if we acknowledge those criticisms, can we still agree that Mayer's book has been incredibly valuable in raising awareness about this issue?
Absolutely. Even if you don't agree with all of her conclusions.
Right.
Dark money has sparked an important national conversation about the role of money in politics.
It has.
A conversation that I believe is essential for the health of our democracy.
I think that's a crucial point.
It is.
Regardless of your political leanings,
Exactly.
understanding how dark money operates is essential for being an informed and engaged citizen.
Yes.
It's about recognizing the forces that are shaping our political landscape, even if they're operating in the shadows.
You got it.
And it's not just about being informed.
No.
It's also about taking action.
It is.
What can you, the listener, do to get involved in this fight? Where can you start?
That's a great question.
Very tough one.
It can feel overwhelming to know where to begin, especially when we're talking about such a complex and entrenched system.
For sure.
But I think the first step is to stay informed.
Okay.
Keep reading books like Jane Mayer's Dark Money,
Uh-huh.
follow the work of investigative journalists and watchdog organizations, and educate yourself about the issue. Knowledge is power.
Right.
And the more you understand about how dark money operates, the better equipped you'll be to resist its influence.
And don't underestimate the power of your own voice.
Yeah.
Contact your elected officials.
Yes.
Let them know that this issue matters to you.
Exactly.
Support organizations that are working for campaign finance reform. Donate your time or money to their cause.
Every little bit helps.
Every action, no matter how small,
It's true.
can contribute to the larger movement.
You hit the nail on the head.
This is about reclaiming our democracy.
Yes.
And ensuring that everyone has an equal voice.
Exactly.
Regardless of their wealth or influence.
Just do it.
It's definitely a fight worth having. We've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have.
From the mechanics of dark money donations to the impact they have on elections, policies, and even public trust.
Big one.
It's a lot to absorb.
It is.
And honestly, it can feel a bit overwhelming at times.
Yeah, no doubt. It's certainly complex.
It is.
But I think that's why these deep dives are so important.
I agree.
They help us break down these complicated issues and make them feel less daunting.
I totally agree. It's like we're taking this big, tangled web of dark money and slowly unraveling it together.
We are.
So where do we go from here? What happens if we don't address this problem? What are the long-term consequences for our democracy?
That's the question, isn't it?
I
think one of the most significant dangers is the further erosion of public trust in our institutions. When people feel like the system is rigged, that their voices don't matter, they start to disengage.
They just give up.
They do. They become cynical and lose faith in the democratic process.
And that cynicism can lead to apathy, right?
Absolutely.
Fewer people voting, fewer people running for office.
It's a problem.
Fewer people even paying attention to what's happening in their communities.
Exactly.
It creates a vicious cycle.
It does. And that creates a breeding ground for extremism and political instability.
Oh, wow. When people lose faith in the established system, they become more susceptible to radical ideologies and populist appeals that promise easy solutions.
Oh, that makes sense. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is.
The more disillusioned people become, the more likely they are to embrace extreme views, which further erodes trust in the system.
You got it.
It's a scary thought.
It is. And it's not just about the future of our democracy.
Oh, right.
There are also economic consequences to consider.
Like what?
When policies are crafted to benefit special interests rather than the common good, it can distort markets, stifle innovation, and ultimately hurt economic growth.
So we're talking about a problem that impacts not just our political system, but our economy as well.
Exactly.
Dark money is a threat on multiple fronts.
You're right. It's a multifaceted issue.
Yeah, and it exacerbates inequality.
It does.
When the wealthy can use their money to buy influence and rig the system in their favor,
it creates an uneven playing field that makes it harder for everyone else to get ahead.
That's a problem.
This, in turn, can lead to social unrest and further division within society.
For sure.
It's almost like this issue of dark money is a symptom of a much larger problem.
It might be.
It's a symptom of a system that prioritizes wealth and power over the needs of ordinary people.
That's a very insightful observation.
Thanks.
It makes you question the very foundation of how our system operates.
Yeah, it does. But even with all the challenges we've discussed, I still have a sense of hope. It feels like awareness of this problem is growing.
It does.
And more people are demanding change.
I think you're right. More and more people are waking up to the reality of dark money and its corrosive effects on our society.
It's definitely not an issue that's going away anytime soon.
Nope.
So what can our listeners do? How can they get involved in this fight?
The first step is to stay informed. Keep learning about the issue.
Right.
Dig deeper and challenge yourself to understand the nuances.
And remember, you don't have to be a political expert to make a difference.
No, you don't.
Contact your elected officials and let them know this issue matters to you.
Yes.
Support organizations working to reform campaign finance laws. Donate your time, your money.
Right.
Or simply spread the word.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the larger movement.
It's about reclaiming our democracy.
It is.
And ensuring that it serves the interests of all citizens.
Exactly.
Not just a select few. We've only just scratched the surface of this complex issue.
We have.
But I hope our deep dive into dark money has left you feeling more informed and empowered to take action.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the shadowy world of dark money.
Of course.
It's been a real eye-opener.
It has.
And I hope it sparked a fire in you to demand better from our political system.
I hope so too.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep fighting for a brighter future.